Tom, you are one lucky man. Most, if not all, of your fellow organizers have been arrested. What do you see your role being now in this protest?
Just to regroup at this point, there are several truckers in the Ottawa area. They're on the outskirts of towns in different places, and I'm going out to meet with them this afternoon and to see really what they want to do. What's their next step? And we've said all along that this is not any one person. Like, you can't point to one leader of this movement. This is Canadians all over the country, and that's what we've seen in several cities across Canada, across the US, in Europe, Australia, New Zealand. So, you know, the other members were, excuse me, they were, Danny Beaufort, for example, was let out of custody very quickly, like within a matter of hours with no charges. Chris is in another location, and Tamara is still in custody. But the movement still continued on because we didn't have one single leader. We did it as a movement and more of a collective. And we're just ordinary Canadian citizens.
Tom, did you ever think when you joined the convoy that this protest would trigger the Emergencies Act, arrests and blockades, and end this way?
No, I didn't. It's very disappointing, honestly, like as a Canadian citizen, that we begged for dialogue. We begged. I contacted members of Parliament through their websites, through email. I had meetings with the city of Ottawa. We talked every day, several times a day, to the Ottawa police. And instead of actually getting anywhere, they just went right to the nuclear option. And the way we see it, it feels more like a massive power grab that they have very little interest in letting go of. So, you mentioned my bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. There's no warrants for my arrest. I check with the Ontario Provincial Police every day. I've never been charged. I have no criminal record, but yet my bank accounts have been frozen. I can't access my army pension that I live on. And my spouse had her credit rating dropped 109 points. She doesn't even have the same last name as me. So how did they? Nobody knows where I live, just because I'm a very private person until recently. But, without any due process, our assets have been taken away from us. So, and you know what the offense we've committed here in Ottawa is? Parking infractions. People need to understand that. Parking infractions. We worked very hard with the Ottawa police to make sure that there were safety lanes open for emergency vehicles at all times. Parking infractions is how Canadians were beaten in the streets the other day by police.
I heard that some people were arrested on charges of mischief. Am I incorrect on that?
That's true. That's what like Tamara and Chris, for example, it was mischief is what they got them on.
Okay, this protest was initially about vaccine mandates against truckers. There was a memorandum of understanding that asked for the government to be overthrown. Over the weeks, the messaging seems to change to an opposition against all COVID mandates. One of your last press conferences, Tom, listed 5 bullet points, essentially wanting to end all vaccine mandates. Do you think that will happen now?
I think 2 things are going to happen. I think that Canadians that have been watching this throughout are really going to be woken up to the fact that I think they don't like the idea that their financial assets can be frozen with no notification. So even the hardcore people that are pro mandates and everything like that, the one thing they're not going to like is the fact that without any due process, the government is able to actually go in and freeze all of your assets just for providing any sort of Facebook support, social media support, or even contributing a few dollars for something that they believe in and have a right to express. So I think there's going to be more grassroots movements around this country, and it won't have anything to do with this particular group in Ottawa, because we have no connections to the other convoys or the other protests around Canada. So I think Canadians are going to start really honestly waking up to some of the government overreach. And then the other thing is, on the political side, like, we've never been about the politics. Like, we're not here for government change. Like, the convoy itself is one group of many groups that are here in Ottawa that at times sees the opportunity to benefit from the attention of the convoy. And so there are several different groups in the Ottawa area that try to exploit an advantage for their particular cause. But never did this convoy ever, in any meeting I was ever in, talk about change of government or anything like that. It's not we're not interested in it. We know there are groups associated with this, but those groups were active in their cause months before the convoy was ever even an idea. So, like-minded groups came together to do this convoy, but the main mission of the Freedom Convoy 2022 has always been end the federal mandates. That's it. We're not interested in any government internal political garbage. We believe in the democratically elected process.
And so let's focus in on those mandates. I guess that's where my question lands. Now that the protest has been dispersed, you've told people to go home peacefully. Where does this land when it comes to much of the mandates that this country is still under?
So from what we're going to do is, and I've spoken to our lawyers from we have several lawyers here on the ground that are assisting in with various different things, from charter stuff all the way to criminal lawyers that are here pro bono or nonprofit that are helping. And we are, like I did in the press conference the other day, we are exploring legal action against the government of Canada. That's one avenue that we have. But interviews like the one you and I are doing right now is another avenue that we have to put the pressure on some of the other political parties so that they can see what Canadians really are talking about. And then at the as it should be, at the federal, provincial, or at the federal government level, the opposition party should be putting pressure on the actual formed government of Canada to represent what the people of Canada want, or at the very least, they should listen. And in this country, I haven't heard of one referendum on any issue related to COVID-19 in 2 years. Not one referendum has come out of any government level in this entire country. Nobody asked the voters to actually vote whether they wanted these things to be imposed on them. So it's disappointing. The federal MPs the other day in Parliament, all they did was talk about their hurt feelings because of insinuations by the Prime Minister. While we had truckers out in minus 20-degree weather, sleeping in cars and trucks on their doorstep, and they were talking about hurt feelings, inside. And that was what the debate was about. I think often they miss the point, and it's very, very frustrating. So I'm hopeful that the other political parties that are not liberal start to really wake up and pay attention to what's happening to ordinary Canadians. And I'm starting to see that with some of the parties. They're being more vocal. So I just would love for the federal members of Parliament to actually start doing their jobs.
Yeah.
And, they're going to give themselves a raise on the 1st of April for the 3rd year in a row, while locking people down and taking their businesses.
Tom, I only have a few more minutes left. I want to give you an opportunity to talk to those who live in the Ottawa area. There are a lot of counter protests as well. What would be your response to them? A lot of people are upset at the protesters and the convoy. What is your response to them?
My response would be when Justice McLean ruled that he wanted the horns to stop, we did our very best to comply with that order. But in terms of the rest of Ottawa, we begged for the city of Ottawa to allow those businesses to open. We wanted businesses open. The city didn't open them. We wanted to shop in those businesses. We wanted to support local business. But what I will say is that if as an Ottawa citizen, if you were unaffected by what was happening in the downtown core, and everything you learned about the protest, you were learning from mainstream media. It's unfortunate that you didn't take an opportunity to go down and actually see all the hugging and the happiness that was actually in the downtown. We had bouncy castles there, guest speakers, we had musicians. It was like a Canada Day celebration on weekends for 4 weekends in a row.
Mm.
Um, and we also recognized that we were impacting people in Ottawa, but we shoveled sidewalks. We put salt down. We kept safety lanes open. Crime was down in Ottawa 90% since we were there. We provided first aid for people that had, for example, a lady fell on the ice. We gave her first aid until an ambulance came and took her to the hospital. We were feeding the homeless, not the city. We were looking after people. And one example, somebody OD'd and we provided medical assistance and saved that person's life. So we were trying to be good partners with the city, and we talked to the city and to the police every day to learn to work together, because we were going to stay there until somebody got the message that we wanted to talk.
Mhm.
So it's unfortunate that people, lived in their nation's capital, literally the capital of protesting.
Mm.
And I can't control where they live, but this is where we needed to be, because this is where the people who are making decisions at the federal level for all our lives reside and work.
Yeah.
So we had to bring it to them because they weren't listening across the country.
Tom, I also want to give you the opportunity to address another concern that was there. There were accusations that there were Confederate flags, swastikas, and other offensive terms being used during the protest. How would you address those accusations?
So Chris Barber, one of the sort of founders of the Truck Convoy, had a Confederate flag, and we spoke about it, and he said, it's a part of the world's history. It's not a symbol of his core beliefs. It's just a and for all, to be honest, it's an American symbol of something. It's not a Canadian symbol of anything. And I, as a kid growing up, one of my favorite TV shows was the Dukes of Hazzard, and they had a Confederate flag all over the hood of the car, right? It's not, we didn't have that flag out in the open as any form of a political statement because it's not tied to anything. But we can't walk away from history. We can't, just wash it away like it never happened. And sometimes we just have to acknowledge it and learn from it and move on from it. But in terms of the Nazi flags, I never saw any. You know, I can't even comprehend that whole line of thinking. To be perfectly honest,
Mm.
I never saw one. There's never anything in this movement that had anything to do with Nazis or neo-Nazis or anything like that. But we can't all be painted with the same brush because maybe one individual brought that kind of symbolism to this protest, but it had nothing to do with what our cause was. The people I'm with are extremely faithful, religious people that denounce that kind of behavior and always would, and wanted nothing to do with it. So we can't be painted with a brush because maybe one individual made a bad decision in their life.
Mm.
And by the way, for example, I saw a photo the other day of Justin Trudeau signing a neo-Nazi flag at the Calgary Stampede. I don't think he realized that it was there was a swastika on it. But do we run around and make accusations? Maybe he made a mistake. I don't know. But for this particular prime minister, what's the saying? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. He's really highlighted a gross amount of hypocrisy in his behavior when he talks about Canadians the way he does, and then goes and does the exact opposite.
Thanks so much for your time today, Tom. I just want to speak as a Black woman just on your comment about the Confederate flag. There are some deep roots when it comes to the Confederate flag, and it hurts me to hear the lack of understanding of how it could be offensive to someone like me. So I would just challenge and hope that you and your team would do a little bit more research on how it could offend Black people in our country. Even though it doesn't have its roots in Canada, it's still quite offensive part of North American history. But I just wanted to make sure that you personally heard that with me.
And I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But what we can't do from just my own point of view is we can't get rid of history. We have to learn from it. We have to be able to talk about it, and we can't be censored when things are offensive, because there are a lot of things about that are offensive. There are many offensive things throughout history, but we have to not hide from them. We have to confront them. And maybe
Absolutely.
this is a platform to do that at another time, obviously, but we
Yeah.
have to confront our past.
We do. We just don't have to wave it in front of other people if it's going to offend our brother or sister. Thanks so much for your time today, Tom.
Thank you.